I need to get this off my chest because the situation is driving me crazy. I'm Robert, 34M, and I own this small cafe in downtown Seattle. It's not one of those trendy spots with fancy latte art and overpriced avocado toast, just a cozy place serving good coffee, fresh pastries, and simple lunches. I started it 5 years ago after spending nearly a decade working as a barista in various coffee shops around the city. Starting the cafe wasn't easy. I used all my savings, took out a small business loan, and worked 80-hour weeks at the beginning. My wife Tori, 32F, was amazing through it all. She kept her teaching job and supported us while I got the business off the ground. Those first 2 years were rough. There were times I thought we wouldn't make it, but we pushed through. Now the cafe is stable. Not making millions, but enough to pay me and my 2 employees, Mark and Lisa, decent wages and keep the lights on. The problem started with my in-laws, Mike, 58M, and Linda, 56F. They owned this jewelry store that Mike's father started back in the 60s. It was one of those family businesses that everyone in town knew about. They sold everything from engagement rings to luxury watches, and while it wasn't Tiffany's, they did well enough to live in a nice house and put their kids through college. Both of Tori's siblings worked at the store. Tom, 35M, was their top salesman, the kind of guy who could convince anyone to upgrade to a fancier ring or more expensive watch. Rachel, 28F, handled their marketing and online presence. She's really good with social media, always posting about new collections and creating these mini documentaries about custom pieces they made. Everything changed about 6 months ago. Mike and Linda started watching these YouTube channels about people who sold everything to travel the world. At first, it was just something they watched for entertainment, but then they got obsessed. They started following all these travel influencers on Instagram, joined Facebook groups about digital nomads, and bought courses about making money while traveling. Tori and I noticed the change but didn't think much of it. Her parents had always been pretty level-headed about business decisions. They'd run their store successfully for decades. But something about these travel influencers really got to them. They kept talking about how life was passing them by, how they needed to seize the moment before they got too old, how the jewelry business was changing anyway with online retailers taking over. One day in January, they called a family dinner to make a big announcement. They decided to sell the store. Just like that. They had a buyer lined up, some corporate jewelry chain looking to expand in our area. Tom and Rachel were shocked. Sure, they'd get decent severance packages, but they'd both built their careers around the family business. Neither of them had ever really worked anywhere else. Mike and Linda were so excited about their plans. They'd sell the store, keep some of their best pieces to sell online while traveling, and become travel influencers themselves. They had it all mapped out. Start in Southeast Asia where costs were low, build a following on social media, then partner with luxury hotels and jewelry makers around the world. They even had a name picked out for their brand, Gems Around the Globe. The sale went through faster than anyone expected. By March, they'd handed over the keys and were posting pictures from Thailand. Tom and Rachel had to scramble to find new jobs. Tom managed to get a position at a high-end department store, but he hates it. Rachel had a harder time. Turns out social media jobs are pretty competitive when you can't rely on family connections. Then last week, everything fell apart. Mike and Linda came back early from their trip. No big announcement, no explanation at first, they just showed up at Tori's school to surprise her. Later that evening, they called and asked for a family meeting at their house. Said they had something important to discuss. When Tori and I arrived, we found Tom and Rachel were already there. Mike and Linda looked different, tired, stressed, not at all like the excited travelers from their social media posts. They started talking about how the travel influencer market was saturated, how their content wasn't getting the engagement they expected, how everything cost more than they'd planned. Then they dropped their real bombshell: they want to join my cafe business. Not just Mike and Linda, but Tom and Rachel too. All 4 of them. They had this whole presentation ready. Mike would handle the finances and expansion plans. Linda would develop new menu items and handle customer service. Tom would manage sales and staff, and Rachel would do the marketing. They talked for an hour about their vision for my cafe. They want to expand into the empty space next door, add a jewelry display case for Linda to sell their remaining pieces, start a catering service, and eventually open more locations. They had projections, sketches, even a new logo Rachel had designed. The whole time they were talking, I felt like I was in some weird alternate reality. My little cafe barely seats 40 people. We make enough to pay the bills and provide a comfortable living, but we're not exactly Starbucks. Adding 4 new salaries would bankrupt us within months. I tried explaining this. I showed them our actual numbers, our profit margins, monthly expenses, salary costs. But they wouldn't listen. Mike kept saying how they'd built their jewelry store from nothing, how they could do the same with my cafe. Linda talked about how combining coffee and jewelry would create a unique boutique experience. When I finally put my foot down and said no, things got ugly. Mike started bringing up how they'd welcomed me into their family, paid for most of our wedding, helped with the down payment on our first house. Linda cried about how they had nowhere else to turn. Tom and Rachel just sat there glaring at me like I was destroying their lives. Tori tried to mediate, suggesting maybe we could look at hiring one of them part-time once we'd saved up some money. But that just made things worse. They started accusing her of choosing me over her family, saying she'd changed since marrying me. Now I'm getting constant calls and texts from various family members. Linda's sisters are calling me selfish. Mike's brother, who I've met maybe twice, left me a long voicemail about family obligations. Meanwhile, Rachel's already created social media accounts for the cafe's expansion without my permission. Tori supports my decision but feels terrible about the whole situation. She knows I'm right about the business side of things, but these are her parents, her siblings. They're not bad people, they're just desperate and making bad decisions. I'm standing firm because I have to. This isn't just about me, I have 2 employees who depend on this job. I have regular customers who count on us being here. I can't risk everything just because my in-laws made a bad decision to sell their business. But watching this tear the family apart is harder than I expected. Update 1: Things have gotten way worse since my last post. Remember how I mentioned Rachel had created unauthorized social media accounts for the cafe? That turned out to be just the tip of the iceberg. What she's done has put my business in serious jeopardy and created a huge mess that I'm still trying to clean up. The first sign of trouble came when a local catering company called me asking about a supposed partnership. They'd seen our posts about expanding into catering and wanted to discuss splitting some upcoming events. I had no idea what they were talking about until they sent me screenshots from an Instagram account I'd never seen before. Rachel hadn't just created social media accounts, she'd built an entire fake brand expansion. She was running accounts on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and even LinkedIn, all using my cafe's name and logo. She'd photoshopped pictures of my cafe to make it look bigger, adding in that empty space next door as if we'd already expanded. She'd created mock-ups of new menus, pricing lists for catering services, and even employee uniforms that I'd never approved. The worst part? She'd been responding to customer inquiries and taking actual bookings. She set up a business PayPal account under her name but using my cafe's brand, and she'd been accepting deposits for catering orders and event bookings that we have no capability to fulfill. I discovered this when a bride showed up at the cafe last Tuesday with her wedding planner, expecting to discuss her upcoming wedding reception that Rachel had apparently booked. I spent 3 hours that day dealing with a crying bride who'd already paid a $500 deposit to Rachel for an event we couldn't possibly host. The bride had all these messages from the cafe's events team, aka Rachel, promising everything from custom coffee bars to specialty dessert stations. She'd even been guaranteed that we'd arrange for a jewelry display featuring unique pieces for the bridal party. That was bad enough, but then I started digging deeper into what else Rachel had been posting. She'd been running this whole social media series called Family Business Transformation, documenting how my cafe was being taken to the next level by experienced business owners. She used old photos of their jewelry store success to build credibility, making it seem like they had some track record in the restaurant industry. Mike and Linda had been actively participating in this deception. They'd been going around to their old jewelry store customers, telling them about their new venture. They weren't just hinting at being involved anymore, they were straight up telling people they were taking over management of my cafe. They'd been promising special discounts and perks to their old customers, claiming they'd honor these promises once they finalized the partnership agreement. When confronted, they didn't even see what they'd done wrong. Rachel said she was creating positive pressure to force me to see the potential. She'd gotten thousands of followers for these accounts, and people were genuinely excited about the fake changes she'd promised. Tom backed her up, saying I should be grateful for all the free publicity. The real bombshell dropped when Tori got a call from her cousin who works at our local bank. Mike and Linda had gone and trying to get information about my business loan and explore options for additional financing. They actually thought they could take out loans against my business without my consent. They had this whole pitch prepared about being silent partners in the cafe. Thankfully, the bank shut them down immediately and alerted us. I had to spend last weekend doing emergency damage control. I posted clarifications on my cafe's real Facebook page explaining that all these other accounts were unauthorized. I had to reach out to everyone who'd paid deposits to Rachel and explain the situation. I'm now dealing with angry customers who booked services we never offered, confused regulars who don't know what's real anymore, and a bunch of negative reviews from people disappointed that the promised expansion isn't happening. My lawyer sent cease and desist letters to Rachel demanding she take down all the unauthorized accounts and return any money she'd collected. Instead of complying, she doubled down. She posted a tearful video about how family businesses are complicated and how she's just trying to help her brother-in-law see the potential. She's turned this into some sort of social media drama that's getting way more attention than I want. The impact on my actual business has been significant. Regular customers are confused and asking questions I shouldn't have to answer. Some people are angry, thinking I went back on promises I never made. Others are taking sides in what they see as a family drama, with some even boycotting the cafe to show support for my in-laws. Tori's relationship with her family has hit rock bottom. They've started excluding her from family events, saying she's chosen me over them. Her aunt called her ungrateful, saying she should be able to control her husband better. They even uninvited us from her cousin's wedding next month, saying our family drama would spoil the event. The worst part is that Mike and Linda still don't see what they did wrong. They keep saying they were just trying to help, that I'm being stubborn and short-sighted. They sent me a long email last night about how real family businesses require sacrifice and trust, completely ignoring the fact that they're the ones who sacrifice their own family business for a failed travel dream. I've had to install security cameras at the cafe because I don't trust them anymore. I'm worried they might try to stage some kind of takeover or create more drama for social media. Tori is supporting me, but she's heartbroken watching her family fall apart. Meanwhile, I'm just trying to keep my small business running while dealing with this nightmare they've created. Update 2: I finally discovered why my in-laws have been so desperate to take over my cafe, and it's much worse than anyone imagined. A friend who works in accounts at the company that bought their jewelry store called me last week. She felt I needed to know some information that came to light during the final audit of the sale. The store wasn't just sold because Mike and Linda wanted to travel, they were forced to sell before everything collapsed. For the past 5 years, they'd been taking out loans to keep the business afloat while maintaining their image of success. They had loans from 6 different banks, several high-interest private lenders, and had even borrowed money from Linda's pension fund. The travel influencer dream was a cover story to save face in the community. They needed to sell quickly before their creditors started legal proceedings. The amazing opportunity they claimed they got from the corporate buyer was actually a desperation sale at a lower price than the store was worth. Here's where it gets really messy: Tom and Rachel were part of the deception. They'd been drawing huge salaries from the failing business, fully aware that the company couldn't afford it. Tom was making $120,000 a year as a sales manager while the store was losing money. Rachel was paid $85,000 plus bonuses for managing their social media, even though their online sales were minimal. The store had been operating at a loss for over 3 years. They kept up appearances by taking new loans to pay off old ones, creating this cycle of debt that was about to implode. They were just 2 months away from missing major loan payments when they found the buyer. Most of the money from the sale went directly to paying off debts. The travel fund they talked about was actually just the leftover money, barely enough for a few months of travel, let alone the years they claimed they were planning for. They burned through that quickly because they kept staying at expensive resorts and eating at fancy restaurants, still trying to maintain the image of successful influencers. Their social media career failed because they couldn't afford to keep up appearances. Those beautiful hotel rooms and exotic locations in their early posts? All paid for with the last of their savings. Once the money ran low, they couldn't create the kind of content their followers expected. I learned all this yesterday when Tori confronted her parents with what my friend had told me. They admitted everything but tried to justify it. According to them, they had to maintain their lifestyle to keep up appearances for the store's high-end clients. Every loan was supposed to be temporary, just until business picked up. They really believed they could turn things around until suddenly they couldn't. Tom and Rachel's reaction to being exposed was even worse. Instead of admitting their part in the deception, they're angry at me for digging up dirt on the family. Tom actually said I had no right to expose family secrets and that real family members protect each other's reputation no matter what. The most shocking revelation was about the cafe expansion plan they tried to force on me. I found a copy of their actual proposal in Tori's email. They'd forwarded it to her hoping she'd convince me. Their plan involved taking out nearly $800,000 in loans using my cafe as collateral. They wanted to copy the same destructive pattern that ruined their jewelry store. The jewelry display case they wanted to add? It wasn't just for Linda's remaining pieces. They still owe money to a supplier from their store and thought they could quietly sell jewelry through my cafe to pay them back. They were literally planning to use my business to hide their continuing debt problems. Tori is devastated. All those years she thought her family's business was successful, they were actually drowning in debt. All those fancy family vacations, the expensive gifts, the lavish parties, it was all funded by loans they knew they couldn't repay. Her college tuition that her parents insisted on paying? Paid for with borrowed money. The community is starting to talk. Other local business owners have called me sharing similar stories: bounced checks from the jewelry store, unpaid bills, promises of payment that never came through. Mike and Linda's perfect image is crumbling fast. They're still insisting I should let them join my cafe. Their logic now is that since they're truly desperate, they'll work extra hard to make it successful. They don't seem to understand that their track record of financial mismanagement is exactly why I can't trust them with my business. Update 3: The final straw came last week, and now we're headed to court. Despite my warnings and the cease and desist letters, Rachel not only kept running those unauthorized social media accounts but escalated things to a dangerous level. She started a Save the Family Business campaign, painting me as some kind of villain who's destroying a legacy. But what pushed me to finally take legal action was discovering she'd collected over $18,000 in deposits for fake catering events. She was using a payment app under her name but with my cafe's branding, taking money from people for everything from wedding receptions to corporate events. Some of these bookings were for dates more than 6 months away, and she had no intention of refunding the deposits. My lawyer found 27 different customers who'd paid deposits ranging from $200 to $1,500. Rachel had sent them professional-looking contracts, complete with my cafe's logo and a forged signature. She even created fake staff profiles, making up names and backgrounds for event coordinators who don't exist. I had no choice but to file a lawsuit against her for trademark infringement, fraud, and theft by deception. The police are also investigating the possibility of criminal charges because of the fake contracts and unauthorized use of payment systems. Mike and Linda's response to the lawsuit was to stage what they probably thought would be a dramatic takeover of my cafe. They showed up during our busiest lunch hour last Tuesday, carrying boxes of old jewelry and display cases. Linda started rearranging furniture while Mike stood at the counter announcing to customers that they were the new management taking over to restore family values to the business. They'd brought about 15 people with them, mostly relatives and some of their old customers, who started setting up jewelry displays on every available surface. They live-streamed the whole thing on social media, calling it their rightful return to business. Some of their supporters were harassing my employees, telling them they should be grateful for experienced management. I called the police, and the whole thing was caught on our security cameras. It took 3 officers to convince them to leave, and even then, they tried to play it up for their live stream, crying about how their own family was having them forcibly removed from their new business. The video went viral in our local community Facebook groups, but not in the way they hoped. Most people are shocked by their behavior. The final insult was finding out they'd been telling people they were willing to honor gift cards from their old jewelry store at my cafe. Several customers tried to pay for coffee with old jewelry store gift cards last week, insisting the new owners said it would be fine. Tori and I have been forced to go completely no contact. We've blocked their numbers, email addresses, and all social media. We've had to hire a security company to watch the cafe, and I've had to explain the situation to all my employees so they know what to do if my in-laws show up again. We've also sent official statements through our lawyer to every family member, making it clear that any attempt to interfere with my business will result in immediate legal action. A few relatives have reached out to apologize, admitting they didn't know the full story and were misled by Mike and Linda's version of events. The saddest part is that Tom and Rachel are now trying to start a competing cafe on the other side of town, using all the social media following they built up while pretending to be my business. They're calling it a true family business, apparently forgetting that they helped run their last family business into the ground. My cafe is still here, still serving coffee, still making enough money to pay the bills. Sometimes protecting what you've built means making hard choices, even if those choices hurt people you once considered family. The lawsuit goes to court next month, and this time, I won't back down no matter how much they try to manipulate the situation.